do think the potential for inflation to accelerate from here is receding, but we do think that inflation could very well stay at an elevated position for a long period of time. At the moment, the Fed and the CBO are both predicting a quite meaningful deceleration in inflation to just under 3% next year. We're very skeptical. One of the main reasons is actually purely technical. Housing prices are a huge component of the inflation figure. And at the moment, the housing price inflation figure is something like 5-6% according to the CPE and the CPI. We think that has to increase going forward. It might be just it could be just a lagging factor. And when that comes through, it is going to have an impact. It's going to keep inflation very high. At the same time, we've obviously got the food considerations and also energy flowing through the economy. So we do think there's a lot of reasons to expect inflation to remain elevated. And I actually should also include the likely increase in wages across the world. So there's reasons to believe inflation is not going to drop below 3%. Having said that, we don't think we're going to move into a hyperinflation environment. So the inflation concerns are real. They're here to stay, but we don't see inflation increasing materially from here. But we do see it staying at an elevated level for at least 23 and probably being higher than certainly the Fed expectations.
Uh-oh, gosh, elevated for longer then. I mean, we're not talking about Weimar numbers, but anything in excess of 8% is still very worrying, especially if one component of that, gasoline, as Will and I have been talking, fresh record, $4.61 a gallon, if that either persists or gets even worse. So net, connect all the dots. Elevated, inflation is going to stay elevated, you think. What's going to happen to growth? And are we talking about recession or stagflation or some combination of potentially both?
Yeah. Look, I think one of the wonderful things about the US economy that makes it so effective is that it does adjust rapidly to the environment. And that adjustment does actually mean that if interest rates go up and we see a decline in consumer spending, there is going to likely be a recession. So we think that there probably will be a recession, but it won't be a very severe recession. So recession is just a technical term for two consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. So we could see two negative quarters of GDP growth. And then the great thing about the US economy is it will respond to that. So to summarize, we think that the increase in interest rates, we're seeing consumer sentiment decline. We saw in the retail results last week, the consumer is starting to pull back. And all these factors does increase the risk that GDP will slow and likely turn negative for a couple of quarters. But then that'll give the Fed some space to stop their tightening regimes, tightening policy. And therefore, we actually think that interest rates probably won't be increasing in the back half of 2023.